From the very beginning, team proposition have had a misconception and debate based on the assumption that if a large supermarket chain comes into a developing country and makes profits, it automatically means that these smaller nations, the producers and the retailers here, are more grossly disadvantaged and face problems. This is fundamentally incorrect, and they provide us with no actual analysis which proves these things because they were quite shallow and not substantial. In this speech, first of all, I'll be rebutting two things which they try to rebut from our side, and because there is no further positive matter from their side, I'll be moving on to a constructives, where first I'll be talking to you about the mass level benefits which we get not only for the corporations but for consumers as well, but why the economy as a whole benefits on the longer run. So the very first thing, right? They challenge our idea of how technology diffusion is important in these countries and greatly contributes to the improvement of production procedures by saying that these local producers and retailers can do it by themselves. We tell you that's incorrect on two reasons. Because first, in these sorts of markets, there is no competition whatsoever. If these firms and these retailers have reached a level which is even to each other, we tell you the economy becomes symmetrical, where there is no competition and there is no necessity for any of these individuals to improve. So these firms remain at a stagnated level and just base their business on satisfying. We tell you in such a scenario, it's not important for them and they have no drive to improve or innovate, and hence they just play it safe and choose not to explore greater dimensions. But more importantly, they don't even understand why it's important to expand, because whatever they want is being fulfilled by their present firms. So essentially, that's the first reason. But secondly, they don't even have the equipment or the capital to go out and conduct enough research and development to bring about actual change from scratch itself, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why it's really improbable that they will be able to come up with anything good, even if they do have the initiative to do so. So this doesn't essentially occur naturally. Secondly, the idea of exploitation. We tell you that the idea that the scope for exploitation is not that wide. Why? Because these firms automatically have a necessity to give fair wages and give good working conditions to their workers, because they have to maintain an international standard. Why is this important? Because you see, these corporations always have a really high amount of media scrutiny over it, and all of the competitors always try to make sure that even the smallest problems and problems of morality are caught, and these firms can be disadvantaged to eliminate competition. As a result, it's very difficult for them to go out and actually exploit these workers very extensively. For instance, we see when in Bangladesh Nike entered and they were caught to essentially use child labor, they had to leave the country and could not work here, and pay a lot of fine. Which really these sorts of things prevents these sorts of exploitations from taking place, and hence a check and balance mechanism already exists. Now moving on to the positive content of the debate first. One thing to be clarified, that a lot of the portion of the DPM speech essentially seemed like he meant producers and retailers are the same people. We tell you that's not true. Producers are the people who are essentially producing goods and services, for instance, extraction of agricultural products, production of finished goods, for example, but retailers are the ones who are purchasing it from the different producers and selling it in a market system, ladies and gentlemen. We tell you that's how it works. But secondly, we tell you that in such a stagnated economy, where there is the necessity of a reform, given the rapid population growth and the necessity of economic improvement and increase in GDP, governments really don't have much of a choice in increasing the amount of increasing economic growth by itself, simply because it has a lot of other things to cater to, and it cannot essentially pour and allocate all of its funds into one single faction of the economy, right? We tell you because that's the case, it's very difficult for them to improve infrastructure. However, when these corporations can enter the country, they can form contracts with the government, which essentially enables them to improve the infrastructure and go on and make contracts which will make sure that they do improve telecommunication systems in the country itself. They will improve transportation networks and make sure the country is better equipped for these sorts of trade in the very first place. But finally, we tell you that there might even be joint training programs which the government can help subsidize to make sure that the workers are well trained, and hence a greater, more efficient workforce is automatically created under our model. Now, ladies and gentlemen, now understand why it's very beneficial for corporations. On the very first level, there is a diffusion of technology. We tell you that we may have better quality of refrigeration and storage, for example. We may spread better fertilizers to countries which are particularly focused on fertilizer, for example, ladies and gentlemen. We tell you that the moment they go to these countries is when they can conduct intense research and development to make sure that the production process is at its absolute peak and is optimized. We tell you when this happens, and when this process takes place in the country itself is when every other local producer and retailer also can adapt to the exact same production mechanisms. It's quite easy for them because now they don't have to start from scratch, and the amount of capital they have will be sufficient to improve themselves. That's first. But secondly, we tell you they also have a necessity to improve now because there is competition and someone who is trying to take the market away from them, and hence they will try better to make sure they adapt to it and improve themselves. But moreover, ladies and gentlemen, we tell you that the channels which these large firms create by improving infrastructure and reaches out to the very corners of a particular country to make sure they can extract products from every producer around this nation is very important, because in status quo even the local retailers cannot avail the services of such producers, and hence a lot of goods do not essentially channel across the entire country. Under our model, we show you how more commodities are present for every single retailer across the entire country, and why everyone will have access to a lot more goods. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, we tell you producers can make mass levels of profits because now they can sell their products in gross amounts to these large supermarket chains. But finally, ladies and gentlemen, we tell you that the competition is not completely unfair and is not completely arbitrary. We tell you that in India, for example, when Walmart tried to enter, the consumers were so loyal to their local brands that Walmart did not have enough market share and did not get enough profits and had to leave at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. We tell you that the idea of competing actually does stand. But even if it doesn't, we tell you that smaller local retailers can essentially adapt to other groups of people in the society, people who do not have as much income and do not want to avail the services of very high class supermarket chains, for example, and who do not have such a high standard of living. And if they specialize to actually cater to the needs of these people, then they can substantially make sure that they do maintain profit and can stand in the competition by specializing on certain other factors other than the things which the largest supermarkets are doing. But finally, let's look at the consumers, right? We tell you that it's important for these people to essentially produce a wide range of goods, and this includes a lot of durable goods, for example, right? We tell you that the durability of these goods depends entirely on how well you can store it and preserve it. Until and unless you have enhanced refrigeration systems, you cannot store food, for example, so well. Why is it important to do this? Because as time passes, you can sell off this food, this old produced food at lower prices, and they can reduce prices so that other people can essentially have access to it. Why is this necessary? In developing countries, there are often a lot of problems regarding to food, and people often go hungry. We tell you problems such as malnutrition often exist, and in certain situations, it's important to have a stock. We tell you until and unless you have enough proper refrigerated storages, it's very difficult for you to provide this to people, and essentially you're increasing the quality of life of a lot of people who otherwise would go in a lot of despair. But finally, ladies and gentlemen, we tell you when you can spend low cost on the Griffin products and the most necessary things from one retailer as a whole, we tell you yourself will have a lot more to spend on other sectors and other services. You can go out and enjoy better restaurants and better services. You can obtain better quality of life as such. But finally, we tell you that the amount of products these people can essentially bring into the market are more, and hence people are satisfied in a greater level the moment they go out and have these large supermarket chains in their countries. But finally, ladies and gentlemen, we tell you that the moment these firms make sure that there is a promising condition and can essentially see that a credible market exists in such a locality is when it will attract more FDI to the country itself, because now FDI will think it's quite profitable, which will help the country a lot more to prosper, because now new production methods, new technology, new sectors itself will develop in that country stemming from the newly obtained FDI, which will essentially only arrive when this country can make a profile which is essentially acceptable by more international standards. Under these circumstances, we show you how there are large-scale benefits, and the team proposition doesn't provide us any analysis as to why they can prove the harms. Thank you.